Could you set the scene for us? Could you, give us a sort of taste of the story?
Yeah. So this is the story of Seretse Khama, an African king in waiting, set in 1947. Seretse is of a country that we know then as Bechuanaland, and we today know as Botswana. And he's sent to the UK to complete his studies before he's to go back to his country and take up his duties as king. And as was normal for privileged African men at the time. And things don't quite go according to plan. Just as he's about to finish up his studies, he meets a white woman from Blackheath in London, Ruth Williams, and he falls in love with her. It's a whirlwind romance, and together they decide that they want to marry, and that they will return to his country, her as his white queen. So it's not quite the story of how they fall in love, but it's very definitely the story of what happens once they fall in love, the fallout from that.
This is all true, isn't it?
Yes, it's a true story, absolutely.
It's hard to imagine a couple being put under more pressure than they were.
Really?
Could we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, the pressure was on from every side, essentially. First of all, Bechuanaland was a colony of Great Britain. It was part of the empire, a protectorate. And so initially there is pressure from the British government. What we don't realise is that behind the scenes, South Africa, who is the next door large country to Bechuanaland, is just about to enshrine the laws of apartheid into its system. So the idea of a black king, a man of influence, going back to Africa with a white woman, just at the point where they are enshrining into their laws in South Africa that black and white should live apart, is seen as hugely incendiary. On the other side, of course, you have the Africans, the people from Bechuanaland, particularly Seruwe, which is the nation that Seretse is to be king of, who are also thoroughly against the idea of an outsider, and she happens to be a white outsider, becoming their queen. So the pressure is coming from all directions on this couple. And, I must mention her family as well. Her father, who threw her out at the time that he realised that she was going to marry a black man. So there really seemed to be few people who were supporting the couple and who were on the side of the couple.
Yeah. You've said in the past that you like stories that speak to your own identity.
Yeah.
Does this one do that? And I guess in that way, is it personal?
Yeah, it does in many ways. I mean, first of all, we're talking about Africa and Europe. We're talking about specifically London and a part of Africa. And though the two continents, Europe and Africa, are the two continents really that are responsible for raising me. My parents are from Ghana in West Africa. They were born in a colony, and Ghana became the first sub-Saharan African country to gain its independence. So they were born in a colony that became independent, then came over to England, had me. And so that British side of me is I think informs a lot of what's happening in the film, but also that African side of me, and being able to see several points of view, not necessarily agreeing with them, but being able to see several points of view.
How important was it for you to film in Botswana? Because I believe you were the first feature film to do so. I think TV has maybe
TV, yes. The late great Anthony Minghella had shot a TV series there, but I believe we were the first film. It was very important. It's not always possible. You don't always have the privilege or the luck to be able to shoot in the country that the events that you're about to unfold were set. But I think it's important, if you can, to shoot in the countries for credibility, so that you get a sense of the country, you get a sense of the traditions. It's important for the DNA of the film to have some of the DNA of the real country in it. And of course, the possibilities to shoot in South Africa were abundant and wide. There's a great skill set over there, but it was very important for us to get that very unique landscape that Botswana has, and to involve the people of the country in their own story.
And you mentioned this as a love story. It's also, Ruth falls in love with Seretse, but she also falls in love with that land. And it's kind of important that we see that.
Yes. It's really important for me to lay a love story so that you have romantic love, but you also have other types of love. So this is a story about a man who is in love with his own country. but it's also the story of the woman that he falls in love with and her falling in love with his country. So in a way, it's a triple love story. There's parental love, paternal love in there as well. But for me, love is always a giant theme in the stories that I want to tell.
Can we finally talk, we should, a little bit about David and Rosamund?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, perfect, both of them for this role, with a wonderful dynamic, I think, on screen. This is David's passion project. This is a project he brought to me. In a sense, he cast me as the director in this role. And so we go back 18 years. I cast him in the first series that I wrote for the BBC, a series called Brothers and Sisters. And we always, of course, stayed in touch. 18 years later, he has this passion project adapted from a brilliant book called Calabar by Susan Williams. And he... in a very savvy way, held on to that book until it was ripe to be made. And Rosamund, of course, our first choice, really, for the woman to play Ruth, the actress to play Ruth, and her courage, the courage that she brings to taking on that role, very much reminds me of what I imagine Ruth Williams' courage must have been like herself.